The Atlanta Falcons finished the 2022 season with a 7-10 record and missed the playoffs for the fifth consecutive season. They were 4-4 through 8 games, then went 3-6 the rest of the way. Heading into 2023, it's easy to say, well, it's Atlanta, and they will probably win anywhere from 6 to 8 games again and miss the playoffs for what would be the 6th consecutive season. And in today's video, we are going to be discussing what exactly are the Atlanta Falcons doing? And despite how this may sound, this is not going to be a video strictly ripping the Falcons apart because there is a lot to like about Atlanta, and they are a lot closer to seriously competing than what people realize, or at least have the potential to be. But I fear the Falcons are not going to capitalize when they should. And there is a lot to dive into, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing a lot of the positives for the Atlanta Falcons, and believe it or not, there's a lot of them. They have one of the most unique weapons in all of football in Kyle Pitts, who disappointed in 2022, but a lot of that was out of his control. For Kyle Pitts to put up over 1,000 yards at tight end as a rookie and having a then 36-year-old Matt Ryan throw him the football is nothing short of impressive. It's not Kyle's fault the quarterback play in 2022 was horrific, and slowing Kyle Pitts down isn't as simple as let's double team him because they have no other weapons on their offense, because that's simply not true. In back-to-back years, the Falcons spent not just first-round picks on offensive weapons, but top 10 picks on first-round weapons, the other of course being Drake London. And in London's rookie year, he had over 850 yards and 4 touchdowns on a team that was not good at throwing the football. And for reference, the Falcons finished 31st in passing yards in 2022, ahead of only the Chicago Bears, who finished with the worst record in the NFL and had Justin Fields throwing to, well, nobody. There are a lot of quarterbacks that dream of having a duo of Kyle Pitts and Drake London, Mac Jones, and even with this duo it's not like it stops there offensively either. I was a huge fan of them selecting Tyler Algier in the 5th round of the draft last year, and his contribution as a rookie was noticeable. He averaged nearly 5 yards per carry and eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark. So for Atlanta to have these 3 weapons on their offense, having a good quarterback would go a long way. And there is a pretty good quarterback available in Lamar Jackson, and yes, there will be a cost to that. Full disclosure, I've been wanting to do a video on Atlanta for some time now, and I thought Lamar going to Atlanta made a tremendous amount of sense for both him and the Falcons. It's not unreasonable to think a 6'6", 245-pound tight end that can run a 4.4 40 that already went for over 1,000 yards in a season will at some point get a second contract. Kyle Pitts is a player that can be productive for a decade, that is of course assuming he stays healthy for most of the duration, and a player teams wish they had because of the flexibility he brings to the offense. And sure, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave get a lot of love for the rookie season each of them had, rightfully so by the way, but Drake London certainly looked the part as a rookie in 2022 as well. He was just on a team that threw for 2,699 yards in 17 games in today's NFL, which is perpetually bad. So naturally that was going to limit what both Drake London and Kyle Pitts could do. The point of this is to say if things go right over the next few years for both London and Pitts, they, in theory, should be players Atlanta keeps around for the better part of a decade. And we often hear about quarterbacks on their rookie contracts, but it also applies to other positions. Before the Falcons have to pay Pitts, and again this is reasonably assuming he plays well in 2023 if he has a decent quarterback, they will soon be looking to figure out a long-term contract for him, and the discount of Pitts playing on a rookie scale will be no more. And I would imagine if Kyle has another 1,000-yard year, he will be paid north of $20 million per year at least by that time. This is of course a couple of years down the road. The same would apply to Drake London, and for Atlanta, a franchise that hasn't made the playoffs since 2017, I don't understand being shy about going to get a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. And there will be a crowd that asks about them trading up or comments about the Falcons trading up in the draft next month, and we will get to that, but first I wanted to dive into why they should trade for Lamar, or at least why they already should have. From a team perspective, the Falcons aren't bad, and remember, they still won 7 games last year. In free agency, they added Jesse Bates and Caden Ellis from the Saints to help out their defense. They also added David Onyemata and brought back right tackle Caleb McGarry. So very quietly, the Falcons have been making moves. 8 of their 10 losses last year were by one score, and sure, they did occasionally get beat like most teams do, and I'm not talking about a 19-16 loss to the Steelers. I'm referring to a 35-17 thumping at the hands of the Bengals. It happens, and they've went to back-to-back AFC Championship games for a reason. But the Bucs won the division last year at 8-9, meaning Atlanta, along with Carolina and New Orleans for that matter, were a game away from winning the NFC South. And to get to the playoffs, it starts with winning your division. And out of the quarterbacks in the NFL right now, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say the NFC South has the weakest quarterback play at the moment. You're in a division with Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, and for now, a rookie number 1 overall draft pick. The player Carolina selects could become a franchise quarterback, but if the Falcons make a trade for Lamar Jackson, they instantly become division favorites. This franchise hasn't been to the playoffs in 5 years, and not every offseason does a former MVP quarterback like Lamar become available. And if you give Lamar the weapons Atlanta has, they would not only win the NFC South, but they would be a very, very dangerous football team. And before the Lamar haters comment about he's not a quarterback or whatever, which is ridiculous by the way, you may not know Atlanta finished 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards in 2022 and were 4th in yards per carry. Adding Lamar to this would only help, and only help in a huge way. This would truly be a Madden offense, and the run game is led by the strong right side of the line with guard Chris Lindstrom and right tackle Caleb McGarry. Lindstrom is truly one of the most underrated players in all of football, and I was so glad to see him get a contract extension with Atlanta. And I know money is going to come into the discussion of acquiring Lamar, or at least the possibility of acquiring Lamar, as it always does, but how often does a former MVP winning quarterback become available? And I understand if you don't want to sign Lamar to a fully guaranteed contract because of the possibility of him getting hurt, and that applies for every player, not just Lamar, but I can't get behind the complacency of the front office to make all the moves they have and bring in players like Jesse Bates to help out their secondary, and to not even attempt to go after Lamar when your starting quarterback heading into 2023 is Desmond Ridder. And that's not a shot at Ridder as much as it is to praise the type of player Lamar Jackson is. I really like what GM Terry Fontenot has done for the most part since taking over for former GM Thomas Dimitroff, but this is not one I can get behind, because there's never going to be this clear of a path to take for Atlanta. I don't want to say ever again, because things change so often in today's NFL, but probably not for some time. If in some wild scenario Derek Carr has a career year and the Saints win 10 or 11 games, this is a team you played extremely close, not once, but twice in 2022, and a team you theoretically can beat. I don't think Carolina will be a division contender in 2023 personally, especially with the loss of DJ Moore, but I do think they very easily could be in 2024. Tampa is truly a boom or bust team, and this is a team Atlanta had a chance to beat before, and I say this with quotation marks, the roughing the passer on Tom Brady. They did beat the Bucs in the Week 18 game technically, but Tom Brady didn't play the full game along with several other starters. But what I fear most for the Atlanta Falcons and their future is if Desmond Ridder doesn't work out next year, and if he is not the long-term starter you believe he can be, we are right back at step 1 of finding a franchise quarterback. I don't think Taylor Heinicke is a long-term solution either, and I don't think that's a scorching hot take by any means. And I mean this in the best possible way, but Atlanta's roster is too talented to finish with a 3-14 record or a record bad enough to land them a top 2 pick to ensure they get one of the best quarterbacks available next year. And by that time, even if they do trade up to get a quarterback, we would be entering year 4 of Kyle Pitts' career without him really ever having a great quarterback, which brings us back to the point of being in a tight window of skill position players on their rookie deals. Atlanta's roster is one of the more underrated in all of the NFL, and sure, you can say they have a long way to go before they are competing with the 49ers, Eagles, and Cowboys of the NFC, and I completely understand that. But at what point is being this below average acceptable? Atlanta is 32-50 over the past 5 years, which is also their record since they last made the playoffs. And the talent discrepancy at the quarterback position between the AFC and the NFC right now is downright insane. To get through the AFC, you have to go through a murderer's row of quarterbacks, whether it's Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Herbert, Lawrence, and more. And hell, you can probably toss Aaron Rodgers in this mix too. And on the NFC side at the moment, at least in no order, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Matt Stafford coming off of a big injury, Geno Smith, and Kirk Cousins. And I can't get over not even talking to Lamar to see what he would want in a long-term deal. Atlanta wasn't the only team to decline this opportunity, but if you added Lamar to the Falcons, he would easily be the most electric player this franchise has seen since Michael Vick. No disrespect to Julio Jones is intended. Winning a Super Bowl in the NFL is incredibly difficult, and every team at some point takes a risk to secure the Lombardi Trophy. Whether it's the Rams giving 2 first-round picks plus their starting quarterback to acquire Matt Stafford, or the Chiefs giving up a first-round pick a few years ago to bring in Frank Clark, who always showed up in the postseason. There's a very good chance next year Atlanta wins 9 or even 10 games and loses in the wild card round of the playoffs because they don't have the quarterback play in the postseason to get them over the hump. This secondary should very quietly be good next year, and I fully expect AJ Terrell to get back to where he was in 2021, which was a second-team All-Pro player. I did want to go back for a minute and discuss the yards comment, or at least the passing yards comment earlier, and as most of you probably know, Lamar Jackson does not throw for a lot of yards relative to the average starting quarterback. And I don't want you to think that if the Falcons traded for Lamar, that he would all of a sudden become a 4,000-yard passer in his 6th season in the NFL, because I don't think that would be the case. But thinking out loud, if you are a defensive coordinator heading into Atlanta on any given Sunday, and you have to stop both Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and you're confident you have that part down, how do you plan to stop both Lamar Jackson and Tyler Algier? Because this team could very easily run the ball down your throat for 4 quarters and still come away with a win. And also mentioned earlier, the Falcons' offensive line is pretty good, so giving Lamar time to throw would not be a problem, and as we all know, he can take off at any point. I truly think beating the Falcons with Lamar would be one of the toughest things for any team to accomplish in 2023 because there would be no off plays. There's not at the NFL level, but with other teams you can obviously focus on stopping one playmaker more than another on the opposing offense, and game planning overall is much easier. I fear for Atlanta that Desmond Ridder or even Taylor Heineke do not pan out and they get stuck in this territory where the Commanders currently are. Good players on the roster and can even beat teams like the Eagles and Cowboys, but routinely have inexplicable losses. Atlanta has killed it so far in free agency, and they will address the defense all throughout the 2023 NFL Draft, starting with the 8th overall pick. But for a franchise that had a chance at a former MVP winning quarterback and opted not to take the risk and to play it safe, as they've done for half a decade now, winning an average of 6.4 games per season over the last 5 years, I ask the question, what are the Atlanta Falcons doing? And that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world and help the growth of the channel a ton. Until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.